Hello there, 7th grade. I'm going to get started on this week with a few updates and reminders for you guys. First of all, it is a 4-day week because we are just getting off spring break. So we are only doing 2 sections this week. Yay, 2 sections. It's less work for you guys. I've also went ahead with what I kept saying I was going to do. I finally have the second quizzes that I was talking about earlier on. As with most of these, here's how you should proceed through the week. Step 1, check what's assigned. Step 2, go read Google Classroom. I post stuff on there that's supposed to be helpful to you, and also directions for you to do so I know that you're actually reading those. Watch these videos. They help you. Please don't come to me in office hours with a question that I answered during one of these videos. If you need help after you've gone through that, then that's fine, but watch the videos. For the love of everything, watch them. I've got the 2 homework assignments here. Doc Hub's been working out really well for people, so I strongly recommend continuing to use that. On the quizzes, you have a optional practice quizzes. It says optional. You should absolutely do it because right underneath it in big, bold, underlined letters is a mandatory mastery assessment. That's a lot of words for it's basically a quizzes test. You get 1 attempt at it. You get 1, not 2, not I didn't try hard enough and prep for it, not oh, I need to do it 3 times. You get to do it once. And the reason you get to do it once is because the quizzes practice that's right above it is basically the exact same thing with different numbers. It is just like how I was doing practice tests are very similar to actual tests. So take time, do the practice quizzes. If you need more practice on this stuff, there are 3 additional practice assignments linked down here. It's in this extra practice section that I imagine not many of you have looked at, but you should really look at it. The mandatory mastery assessment is basically my way of trying to test if you know what we're doing and not just sort of muddling your way through it. Anything you have questions on, I'm happy to help you. I'm giving you guys like 2 weeks to do this mandatory assessment. It's basically a test, but you get 1 chance at it. It's only like 13 questions, and it is mostly multiple choice. I will say that during one of my videos, I'm going to tell you the answer to at least one of those questions on the mastery assessment. So I strongly recommend you watch these all the way through to the ends. I intend for them to be helpful. I don't intend for this to be a waste of your time. So please use that wisely. Anywho, onward to section 614. It is a continuation on what we were talking about before, where you are solving a inequality. Now, there's a couple of terminology things that I think are going to start getting confusing if we don't address them right away. So what I want to tell you first is that there are essentially 3 types of things that we're going to be working with in here. And one of them is what's called an inequality. And an inequality has some pretty interesting or easy properties. Inequality is pretty straightforward in that it means not equal. Okay. When it is not equal, that means that it's using something like greater than, less than, such as x is greater than 3 or 5 is less than 7. You can also have an inequality that is something like x is greater than or equal to 3 or x is less than or equal to 10. So inequality just means that it is strictly not equal. It also means that these will have multiple answers. If, for example, I asked you to tell me a number that is going to make this very first inequality that I drew true, I will say, give me a number that makes this statement true. And you can give me an infinite number of numbers. 5 is one that works, because if I plugged it in there, I would write this statement, 5 is greater than 3. And if you guys remember good old alligator teeth, where the alligator's eating the bigger number, The 5 is larger than the 3, and so therefore this is true. And then you look and you say, okay, well, what about like 3? Does 3 work? Well, if I put 3 greater than 3, that is not true. So 3 does not make this true. 6 makes it true. 4 makes it true. 3.1 makes it true. Any statement, any number that makes this true is an answer to an inequality. Now, the second thing that's going to happen is that not only are you going to be dealing with inequalities, you are also going to be dealing with equalities. Now, an equality or an equation is the easier way to say it. Don't say equality, say equation. Are things that you've seen but may not have had it like formally spelled out. That an equation is something like this, like 2x equals 10. Or 3x minus 1 equals to 31. Or that's a terrible example. Let's do like 32. Or 5x minus 10 equals 2x plus, trying to make up a problem on the spot. Let's do that. And you've got like a whole bunch of things that are equations, and these have typically a single answer that makes them true. So if I ask you what x value makes this true, you're asking yourself 2 times what makes 10? Well, the only what that seems to make sense for that is 5. You're not going to use 12. You're not going to use 30. 2 times 5 is 10. So in this case, my answer is x equals 5. The problem starts getting into this where we're like, we don't want to go through this and do guess and check. I don't want to start guessing 3 times what minus 1 is 32. I know you can do that, but it's not efficient. And it's not a good strategy that will last you any length of time. So when you are dealing with equations and to the same extent inequalities, which are just equations with a different symbol in the middle, when you're dealing with equations or inequalities, your whole goal with this is to balance what you do between the two, right? You're going to balance whether you have, if you have a minus 1 on one side, and you're like, okay, I have 3x minus 1. It's right here. You ask yourself, what is the opposite of minus 1? It is plus 1. And the rule with equations or inequalities is when you're doing this, it's kind of like a teeter-totter. It's a balancing act. If I remove a negative 1 from one side, I have to do the exact same manipulation on the other side. If I have them, or similarly, if I have a negative 1 and I added 1 to the other side, to the left side, I need to take the negative 1 or the positive 1 and add 1 to that side. So you add 1, and then you have this equation that says 3x equals to 33, because positive 1 and negative 1 zero out. And now you're saying, okay, 3 times what is 33? And so you divide everything by 3, and you end up with x equals 11. And some of you could have gotten to that by guessing, but then you start getting into stuff that looks like this, and you're like, well, how on earth am I supposed to guess something that makes 5x plus 10 equals to 2x plus 9 and figure out what makes that true? So again, your goal, if you are solving these, and this is kind of preempting the next section a little bit, because the next section is going to be all about solving equations, and then you're going to be solving equations from now until the time you quit math in 5, 10, 15 years maybe. So you will have to learn how to do these. This is going to be a process we're going to go way more in depth into later. But always consider the balancing act. What is the opposite of minus 10? Plus 10. Whatever I do to the left side, if I did something to the left side of this equation, I have to also do the exact same amount to the right. Negative 10 and positive 10 go away. I have a 5x on the left equals 2x's. 9 and 10 is 19. Okay. And then you say, okay, well, how do I get rid of or solve this, you're not going to do it by guess and check because this is not even a whole number. 5x equals 2x plus 19. How do I solve this? Your goal is to take this and get the letter x all by itself. I have on the right a 2x, which is positive even though there's nothing written there. In order to remove a positive 2x, I subtract a 2x from both of these. 5x's take away 2x's is 3x's. Equals to 19. And the reason why this wouldn't have worked with guess and check is because you have to divide away the 3. And I know that nobody's going to be guessing that x equals 19 thirds. Like, that is not a value that you're going to take time to guess and figure out what it is. So that's sort of your crash course in solving equations. We'll deal more with these, much more with these later. You're going to be absolutely sick of them in the near future. What we're talking about is how did the person solve this equation, this 3x minus 1 is less than or equal to 2x. In order to solve an expression like that, the 3x minus 1 is less than or equal to 2x, they did add 1 to both sides. So they ended up with 3x is less than or equal to 2x plus 1. And then they removed the 2x from both sides, and they ended up with 1x is less than or equal to 1, which is just an x is less than or equal to 1. Now, again, I don't expect you to spend a ton of, like, if you don't know how to solve anything yet, don't worry about it. Like, there's some basic solvings that you're going to be doing, but it's really not going to be that hard. We're going to ease into it, and we're going to take a lot of time to do this. This problem is asking what's wrong with the graph that they did right here when they tried to write x is less than or equal to 1. And the answer is that that little symbol, the line underneath the inequality sign, means that you have to put the bubble here filled in. You have to fill in that 1 to indicate that you could plug that in. You could plug in a 1 there. Real quick on this one, when you are reading inequality symbols, you have to get in the habit of reading them left to right. And I know it's going to sound dumb, and I know it's going to be like, oh, why do we have to read it that way? It means the same thing both ways. It does mean the same thing if you reverse it, but when you get in the habit of reading things backwards, you're going to end up writing them backwards. And then you're going to mix up something super simple that's going to cost you a lot of points or a major headache later on. So when I'm reading this first symbol in part A, it says, so you read left to right, so you read the math left to right. This first one says x is less than negative 1 1/2. It is less than negative 1 1/2. And the next part of this problem is asking you to, you write it with the symbol, x is less than negative 1/2. You write it in words, x is less than negative 1/2. And then they want you to show it on a number line. So on your number line, you put the negative 1 1/2 there. Less than means that it has an open circle. It is a hollowed out circle. And then less than is the left direction. X is less than that. So it's everything to the left side. In this one, x is greater than or equal to 2. X is greater than or equal to 2. Keep in mind that the or equal to means that you fill it in with a solid bubble. I'm not going to go into depth on these. I really don't want to walk through these. If you really want an extra fun challenge, go do 6-39. It's a 5D process with the amounts being less than something. Have fun. Please don't do it. It's a lot of work and I'm not going to help you. It's too much. When you go to graph an inequality, you really should read over these notes. This process of finding a point that you can test is huge. It is going to be one of the best skills you learn with dealing with inequalities. I cannot stress enough that this process of testing the value is going to be your friend. The process is very simple. You take an inequality like this x minus 4 is greater than or equal to 8, that's written right here. To solve that, the opposite of minus 4 is plus 4. So they added it and got x equals 12. Pretty straightforward. That's the boundary point. They said, well, x minus 4 is 8. My boundary point is 12. Do not start thinking that you have found a magical shortcut for graphing an inequality. I know that a lot of you will, and I know that a lot of you are going to think that there is one, but the reality is that if you try doing a shortcut like that early, it's really going to cause you a lot of headaches later on. Some people will find a shortcut where they say, well, the inequality arrow is pointing to the right here, so when I graph it, it has to be pointing to the right. And when you're dealing with super basic inequalities, silly tricks like that will work. So don't start trying to find inequality shortcuts yet. The best process you can do is to find the x value that it equals to, put it on a number line like they did right here, and then they tested spots. Here they tested x equals 15, and they said, hey, well, you know, when I plug that in, I end up getting 11 is greater than or equal to 8, and by golly, that's true. So therefore, I take the arrow, and from the 12, I point it at the 15. So this process of testing is going to work for all inequalities, not just the ones that we're doing here. I'm going to do a real brief homework assignment help on this because I've already ran into 17 minutes on this lesson. I'm sorry, guys. A little bit longer than I had intended. On this one, if you're trying to solve it, you're going to step 1, rewrite it as 3x minus 3 is equal to 2 minus 2x. Always, if you're solving an inequality, you put it with an equal sign. I need to move the x's over, so I'm going to add 2x to the left side. I determine that I want the x's on the left, so I have 3x minus 3 is equal to 2. Or 5x minus 3 is equal to 2, pardon me. And then I say, well, I need to add 3 to both sides. So I have 5x equals 5, or in other words, x is equal to 1 because 5 times a number is 5. That means that on my number line, at 1 is where I start the inequality. It is an open circle because of this symbol here, because it is strictly less than. It does not include the point. And then I test a spot. Give me a number to the right of 1 and plug in that number and see if it works. Give me a number to the left of 1, like 0. See if it works. Plugging in 0 is usually your best friend because this zeroes out and this zeroes out, and I'm left with negative 3 is less than 2. That is a true statement. So my arrow has to go to the left there. I will go over more of these in office hours if you need help on. Please note that if you saw it in the homework, I believe I skipped problem 6-46. It looks awful. Don't do it. Please skip it. And best of luck to you guys.